My name is Madison Star Moon. Tonight we do have a special whistleblower guest. First, let me give an introduction to you. You have worked in a uranium mine, have worked on electrical, pneumatic, and microwave tech as a contractor for oil producers. You're an OSP engineer currently working on the Death Cancer Towers.
Yes, that's correct. It's the highlight.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to highlight it. I want to start off from the beginning when you worked inside a uranium mine. A lot of people probably don't know about the pollution and the corruption that goes along with that.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me and supporting this endeavor. At the uranium mines, a lot of toxic chemicals are used to break the elements down and separate the uranium from the dirt, and use a lot of huge equipment to crush everything that's hauled up out of the mine, mix it with some water, mix it with probably 40% is chemicals, and then they run it through some drying processes, and everything separates, and they get what they want out of it. The rest of it's called sludge or sidings or tails, and most of it's pumped right back down into the pit. Probably a lot less regulation involved there than people would like to think.
Who regulates uranium mines?
Well, during these times, I don't believe the EPA was even established. The federal government has this idea that they know the business, will leave it up to them to do it the right way. You know, that attitude prevails yet today, although we've got EPA and 100 other alphabet companies to keep eyes on industry. Many times they feel they know what they're doing, we'll leave it up to them. If something's not reported by a citizen, or there's not a death or an injury, then chances are nothing's going to be examined.
They were actually stealing uranium called yellow cake. Who was stealing the uranium?
A lot of the guys were, and they would pack it in their thermos bottles, and there was no security whatsoever coming in or leaving the mine. And I believe they may have been a secret society, organized, but these guys were together in their efforts, and they would pack this finished product, which was called yellow cake, or a U-235, I believe, and pack it into the thermoses and take it out for redistribution.
So they're selling uranium on the black market, stolen out of mines?
Yes.
Do you still work on oil rigs?
No, there's been opportunity. On the offshore oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, it was common that every 7 to 14 days, when these huge steel wire baskets we built that were probably 14 foot wide and maybe 16 to 20 foot long, when we had them full of garbage, I'm talking about excess chemicals, grease, caustic soaps and acids, cardboard, plastic, aluminum, you name it. I mean, everything from these oil rigs. I mean, this is some heavy construction going on out there. We have a lot of refuse. This stuff would be lowered into near the surface of the ocean, where we would ignite it, burn it for a while, and primarily the only reason we wanted to burn it was to keep the articles that would float in that basket. We wanted to burn those. Once it burned down for 30, 40 minutes, we knew that what was left in there probably wouldn't float, and we would
just dump it. Right, so you just dump it all into the ocean. Now, is that the regular practice for oil rigs, or what?
I was out there for quite a while and worked on several different jobs throughout a several-year period, and I didn't see them do it any different on any of the jobs I was on.
There's federal water and international water. Where did you work?
Both. I worked on land. I worked on oil rigs that were within 50 to 75 miles from the coast. I've worked on oil rigs that were anywhere from 400 to 650 miles from land.
Right.
And different regulating bodies for depending on the distance away from the land you are.
With the EPA, or with the contracts or their permits and stuff for drilling, they're bought and paid for. Why don't you tell everybody how EPA buys out the contracts for permits for drilling?
The way I understand is anybody in the exploration business, and you don't have to be anybody special to do it, just a few dollars and a little bit of ambition. But when you begin buying your permits, and when you begin filing for the mineral rights of the land or the water you're exploring, then you buy exploration permits, you buy drilling permits, you buy a permit for everything you do. The money from those permits are what funds the EPA. So many times the EPA doesn't want to come down too hard anyway, because the people that are paying their bills are the ones that they need to be policing.
Right. So it's like a revolving door policy is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You were personal friends with William Cooper, who went turned whistleblower.
Well, we frequented the same diner for a long period of time, and this was at the same time I was working on the offshore oil rigs down in the southern Gulf area. And after several weeks of eating in the same place, Bill approached and asked if I minded if he had a seat with me. And I told him, not at all, go ahead. And he sat down. We started out as casual talk, and he wanted to know where I was from and what I was doing in town and what brought me to this particular diner. And after a few months of meeting him, he told me who he was and the jobs he had had. We had both expressed appreciation to each other for the time we had spent together and the directions of our ambitions. He was appreciative of the way I thought and felt.
Did you know that he was like on somebody's hit list?
No, not directly, and he never really did claim to be paranoid about anything like that, although self-preservation was a strong subject in our conversations. Many times he had told me some of his previous experience and positions. I didn't see credentials, and I wanted to believe him, and I tell you, the guy spoke straight forth, eye to eye. I felt good about him, and I didn't question the jobs and positions he told me he had. But some of it was pretty extraordinary. I mean, some of it was just, I thought in my own mind, maybe he is embellished.
Right. So how did you find out about his death?
I was wanting to look him up. I knew it had been too long, and I was talking to a friend of mine about it because he read a short story that I wrote, and I said, you know what, it has been too long, because at the end of my story, I left the story off. The line I used was, I knew Bill. And I said, you know what, I got to get a hold of him, man. And so I started trying to track him down, and that's when I found out that I was about 4 months too late, that he had been shot off his front porch.
Yeah, he was murdered. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, you've had several friends that have actually been murdered. Do you feel comfortable about talking about that?
Body temperature might have rose. I've got some perspiration present now. I wasn't here before, but I'm not uncomfortable, okay? I just, it's part of where this country is. It's the mindset of the beast that we have to keep in our forethought. There are people that will stop at nothing.
You feared coming on my show because you feared for both of our safety. You know, we both realize that this is freedom of speech. This is freedom of the press.
I used to take a lot of pictures, and I would keep secret journals, and I would try and do it like those POWs did. Write it on the smallest paper in the smallest print and stage it in the most obscure places on the oil rigs, and would sneak them back in on land in different handles of my drills or my tools, and I was careful about all of this, and my film too. I felt I had nowhere to go with it. I didn't know who to trust with it. I didn't want to approach anybody from state or federal government. I don't trust any of them whatsoever.
The feds have kicked your door in before, right?
Yes, and that was a complete false arrest. The attorneys that represented me only represent falsely accused. Falsification of federal documents going into the FCC. I exposed them, thought everybody would be happy, hoping for a pay raise. 3 days after I got back from vacation, my doors were kicked in. My life as I knew it at the time was destroyed. And I was put on the run, and these thugs that they had chasing me around the country were reporting that I was wanted on the charges of attempt of a federal agent, which is a complete falsification.
On the run from the federal government that was trying to set you up because you had exposed them for the crimes they were committing against humanity.
Nearly caught me once, and then nearly again about 600 miles from there, rolled in on the offices of the contractor I was working for. They were grabbing the wrong people on the job and realizing that it wasn't me. And I told the contractors that if these guys were exactly who they say they are, they would not have grabbed the wrong people. And what the charges they're bringing against me are all false. I've done none of that. I wouldn't be here working every day if I had. And they said, irregardless, we can't have this in our office. and you've got to go. And,
yeah.
The second time I hid in a storm sewer for about 18 hours with about 4 foot of rushing water coming down through there because it was in the middle of a spring storm. It was incredible.
I want you to tell everybody about how they made you steal the fuses off of other oil rigs to sabotage them.
My job was to manage everything electrical. And after when the rig is out there and they're successful with their wells, they're capped. The rig is then moved off of the rig. When I say the rig, I don't mean that whole platform that you're used to seeing on TV. I'm just talking about the spindle top, the drill rig itself, the thing that sends the drill pipe into the ground. When they move that rig off there, it takes a few days. Then we begin to set up permanent living quarters and permanent oil production vessels. And once all that's established, the temporary quarters and we've got the fabricators and the welders and sanders and painters and electricians and everybody out there, and the thing's up and running, then I sit back and I just babysit for the next couple months. All I have to do is keep electricity supplied to the welders. And it became a burr in one of the production manager's side that he thought I was being paid too much money not to be doing anything and wanted me to begin to check his light bulbs and stuff like that, and I told him it wasn't in the contract. And he started sabotaging some work I was doing on the side. So I called back to the office and told him I was having problems with this guy, and they told me to shut the job down. And it was a good friend of mine. It broke me out in the business that I was talking to on the phone, and I trusted him with my life. And I kind of joked and said that we could do that. You know how long? He says no. He says no, we're not talking good. He says you shut it down and let me know when they want to renegotiate. So I did.
Is it more than one that you did this to?
Yeah, it's happened when the trick's not uncommon. I don't think. And maybe the trick I used in this particular situation caught them off guard. But if those contractors don't respect each other out there, they will shut the job down on each other.
It's a free-for-all out there with international water that nobody's regulating it, and they literally, they're just dumping all these chemicals and stuff.
And it could be that way just about anywhere until you start getting close to land where you might have fishermen, you might have citizens that are on that platform that care about the fact that it's washing back up into their backyard. But honestly, anytime we had people coming out there from regulations departments, we knew ahead of time, and we cleaned things up ahead of time. We knew the people were coming. Valves leak, and there's spills, and we use improper. If we've got slick decks out there, we need to keep them clean. Well, rather than keep them clean and spend 2 or 3 hours doing that, it's a lot easier to throw a bunch of chemicals on the deck and rinse it off, because that stuff will take anything off the deck, rather than using some non-caustic soap and a couple scrub brushes and mops. We didn't do it like that. We dumped chemicals on there that dissolved what we wanted to get out of the way. Especially you get into some shallower areas of the Gulf, they have wellheads that are on the bottom of the ocean floor that have been capped off. Maybe they weren't producing enough. Maybe the integrity of the oil wasn't the sweet stuff they wanted, and maybe it was just for future use. Maybe it has been sold on a futures market. I'm not sure why they're all capped off, but sometimes they cap them off and we don't pull the oil out of there to produce. So sometimes these areas have been capped off. They're leaking, and sometimes the casings that go down into the ground for several hundred feet with the concrete walls and steel casings around it, these leak, and when they start leaking down below, they'll work their way up through fissures in the earth or in where maybe plates are butted up against each other of the Earth's crust. That oil works its way up through there, and it's leaking out through the ocean floor all the time.
Weren't you guys doing false flag breaching dams and stuff?
It happens on land jobs where we don't want to be paying trucks to be hauling the stuff out of there, or maybe we get a bunch of heavy rain and our little lagoon is filling up quicker than we want it to, and we know it's mostly water, and so sometimes the stuff is drained off to the side, and if we get caught, we'll pay a little bit of a fine, but the fines are always cheaper than what it costs to haul it out of there and properly dispose of it through waste management system.
It's just so twisted.
I know.
mean, how do they get away? Well, you're telling me that they get away with all of this because they're just regulated by the bad guys?
Well, you just can't trust the people. You got to have somebody outside of the industry watching this. And EPA is not outside the industry when their money is coming from the permits that are sold to go do this. They don't want to stop them people from doing it. And I don't know exactly how it all works, but I know that it wouldn't hurt to have what they call third-party inspection companies. And I've seen that on some of the, not so much in the oil field, but on some of the other jobs I've had in heavy industry, we've had to hire third-party inspectors. And everybody thinks it's kind of a waste of money to have somebody just standing around watching, but it's really not. He doesn't work for the customer. He doesn't work for the contractor or the subcontractors. He's here independently and is aware of the contract agreement between everybody here, and he's going to mark and inspect and sign and okay on a daily basis every move each one of them make. And it just keeps everybody honest. And I want to tell you that our time together has inspired new growth in my heart, Madison. You don't know how much I appreciate and how thankful I am.
I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much.